Chinese audience would go to see an American film.
From TV to movie to reality to
From Wanda Group and Alibaba.
怎么样在竞争中去生存
creative team to China.
And there's that strong anchor to China.
Hello everybody, welcome to Hollywood Meet China, the private meeting with people who work both in China and the Hollywood entertainment industry. Today we are really glad to interview Lianne X, an independent film producer. Lianne, you produced several full-length movies in Chinese. You are an independent producer.
Yes.
What is your background as a producer and how did you come into the entertainment industry in Hollywood?
Well, I was raised in an artistic family in Shanghai. I started acting when I was a child, so I was always loved to be on the stage, and I love watch movies. So I came to the States, I pursued my further education, and then I started also acting here in Hollywood. And then some years ago, I realized my desire is more into telling stories, have a voice in the material. So I slowly transformed and transitioned myself into producing.
What do you think about the Chinese movies market in Hollywood?
It's very limited, actually, because domestic films here, English language films, are so strong right now here in the U.S. market, even in overall international market. Foreign language films are always very hard to get on mainstream distribution here in the U.S. Even movies like receive the Best Film Oscar category, it still has very limited release here. So for Chinese language film trying to penetrate the market here, it's very challenging.
Yeah.
You may find a niche market here, there in major cities in the US, New York, San Francisco, Seattle, Chicago, but will only have a limited release. Even huge commercial movies like in China, well received. You may do well in Chinese populated area, like Monterey Park here in Los Angeles, or certain area in San Francisco. You may have a wider reach, but mostly will play well in Chinese populated area, but still not make up for major release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really niche market because you produced several film-like movies in Chinese, right?
Yes.
So I imagine it has to be really challenging for you to release the movie and about the theatrical release, of course.
Right.
And I know you create a new company for each project, so you are an independent producer. And what is the most challenging aspect of your work, and what struggles do you face?
Well, as independent producers, I think one of the things we always facing is we have to look at the whole movie making process as a whole. We need to look at overall how all the puzzles falling, and starting with the development stage. To create content, to have really strong, compelling story, a great script, ready to be financed, get attachment. Versus studio films, you're looking at bigger budget. We're looking at smaller to medium size, like what I now particularly looking at, budget between maybe $15 million to $40 million. It is a vacancy comparing to, studio finance film. They intend to finance big budget film, tempo film, franchise, big comic, content. We're talking about more than $150 million or even more than that. So we are feel a vacancy as independent producer. However, because this whole process of making movie from actually development stage to get everything ready, to physical production, to deliverables, to marketing, to sales, it's a long way.
Yeah.
And you're facing challenges dealing with all aspects of making a movie work. And then when we are in the development stage, we also wanted to remind ourselves always, who are your audience? What's your market?
Absolutely.
Right? You wanted to make a movie where it can play well, where it can be received, has a strong potential commercial success. At the same time, you're dealing with creative matters. So the creative side also, I think, is so important not to bypass because you think you're going to make a movie can make money. But this is a fine balance. I think as an independent producer, because we have so much responsibility for investors, to our creative team, to everything, from very beginning to very end deliverables. So we look at things has to be all integrated into one picture and not to bypass any of it. And then do it in a way systematically, not just subjectively, But creative matters, a lot of time, it's subjective choices.
Of course. What makes a topic appealing for you, for example?
Maybe I should give you some examples of what I'm doing right now.
Sure.
I have a few projects in the development stage, in various development stage, across different genres. What is compelling story to me, I think, has to have a message where you think when you play in the theater, when the audience watch it, there's certain emotional engagement. When you walk out from the theater, hopefully it's not just resonant with you for 2 hours. Hopefully when the audience walk away from theater, they think about the characters, they reminded by story for some extended period of time. Something can stay, something can feel echo sound inside of your heart. And to me, that could be related to social aspect of what is general atmosphere right now, what we care about, certain subject matters.
So your favorite genre is probably something related to social topic?
That could be one aspect of it.
Okay.
So for instance, what I was saying, give you some examples. I am working with my collaborators, producing partners for English language film, US-China co-production. Is action comedy. We have a very strong producing team put together, both from US side and China side, with a Hollywood veteran comedy director attached. We will bring in A-lister actors from both ends, China and US. We hope can do well in both markets. It's contemporary story, it's kind of buddy movies, but it will reach certain social aspect of it. It's comedy, it's action comedy. And, but in the end, it's more about human story. It's about a target to be chased by assassin. And the assassin later made friends with the target, not knowingly. They become best friend. Then later, it's like, when they realize you're the hitman, I am the target, how they gonna go on with their relationship? Friendship, important, or the gain and loss and power? And also in the end, it's about going back to your inner self, your own emotional world. What life I trying to have? Am I keep doing what I'm doing as assassin? So in the end, we come back to always human aspect of a story. So this is one of the projects I'm developing right now, and we hope to put in physical production later this year. And because my focus right now, very much, all the film is English language film right now, with certain Chinese elements in the material. Hopefully can do well both market, China and the US. And another project will be US, Russia, China co-production.
Wow.
A screenplay I wrote myself.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That looks really exciting. It's a combination. It's a real interesting combination.
So that is it's like a romantic thriller. The story takes place in Moscow. But we have backstory, bring back the political background 50 years earlier when Russia and China, when they were the best friends in 1950s, 60s, and then the diplomatic relationship falling apart. That also affected so many people at that generation when they were young, then how their life transformed, and then how the generations later carry on. So that story has very strong love story elements in it, but it is a thriller. It takes place, it's a crime thriller, takes place in Moscow.
Yeah.
Also has a dance elements in it because the leading lady is a young, beautiful woman who's ballerina.
Wow.
And she got kidnapped in Moscow.
Wow.
And both her boyfriend, the Russian boyfriend, beautiful, handsome, reckless, and with her grandfather from China had to work through all the obstacles and find a way to save her. So this is a nutshell about the story.
Sure.
So you can see, that story has a certain message, again, related to what we care about now, what's going on, how you make decisions in life, what is important to you, how you define love. When you lose something, you realize how precious it is, how you're being honest about yourself, your choices. So in the end, we always come back to tell a human story.
And you wrote the script, you're gonna develop and produce?
I will produce, I'm not going to direct.
Okay.
I'm gonna work with directors to make this work. I have a writing partner as well on the screenplay. And, but this story had been with me for some years. One of the reasons was almost a tribute to my parents' generation, because my dad and my mother, when they were young, they were so much influenced, so much by Russian culture.
Oh, wow.
Dance, music, theater, literature. Because that's simply that time, 1950s, Russia and China, they're the best friends, brothers.
Okay, that's so interesting too.
But then that relation drifted away, but the love for that generation, about Russian art and stuff, is totally become such imprint in their youth, in their life, and affect them so much. So writing this story was coming from that desire, wanted to honor something for that generation, also tell a piece of history a lot of people forgotten about, or it's really a vacancy. We never really had a movie about that part of life.
Could you tell us more about the movie Lord of Shanghai, which was released this year in China?
Yes, sure. So Lord of Shanghai is action drama. It's epic movie in 2 parts. So we released the first parts in February this year. It tells the story of 3 generations of Shanghai, glamorous old Shanghai triad back then, that time, in early 1900s, the underworld life. And one woman had 3 relationships with 3 generations Lord at the time.
Wow.
In the span of 20 years.
Okay.
So the first part actually starts in 1905 and then take us to 1915. So it's also has such a strong historical background because that's end of Qing dynasty and then take us to the early republic.
Could you tell us more about your experiences working previously with international distributors when you work on the Chinese market, for example?
Well, when a Mandarin film like the caliber like the films I produced in the past, our focus definitely, if it's Mandarin language film, primarily is in Chinese market. We wanted to make certain exposure to the film in international market. So we work with international sales company to bring films in international territories. We will not have a major theatrical release, but we release on different platforms, streaming, download, going to film festivals, have a limited release here and there. It's a niche market.
Yeah, sure.
But in order for film to reach a wider audience, we definitely work with professional sales distribution team to bring films like the movies I produced to a wider audience pool. But it's very challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can guess. And do you aim to produce more US-China co-productions in English for the future?
Yes, this is my primary focus right now. So,
could you tell us more about?
Yeah, so I'm developing film projects in English language film, has potential to do well in both markets, China and US, cross different genres. So like what I said earlier, there was, action comedy. It's a live fair, but has a great message about, relationships and try to find identity about who they are. And I have, also mentioned the US-China Russian co-production. It's called Moscow Dream. It's a romantic thriller, takes place in Moscow, has backdrop, a story, political background of Russian-China relationships, that evolvement, transformation, and that impact in human life and cross generations. And I'm also working with Sherwood on a project. It's about the first transcontinental railroad in US. Is also known as Pacific Railroad. That railroad took 6 years to build, from 1863 to 1869. And during this very hard working condition, and such important time at the time to bring East Coast and West Coast together in terms of commerce, exchange, and everything. So that railroad really set a stone for how our landscape it is right now. During that time, Chinese immigrants had contributed significantly. Most of the workers coming from China to help building this railroad. So we are use that historical background going to make a new Western movies. We here typically say spaghetti Western, right? There's this kind of movie category, but I think this can be a noodle Western. Also to honor that, beside the honor that part of history, but also honor immigrant spirit, the founding members in this country, how every bit of contribution to make who we are as a US. This country built upon contribution from everyone, from different, walk of life, to come to find new home, to build a new life here in this new land. So, so we intend to make a movie with that historic background, with a story, coming of age, become a hero, found his own true journey, a Chinese leading man, but of course with a joint cast from West as well. So that's the film. It's like a Western, it's a drama, has action in it. And this is something I'm developing right now with Sherwood, and he will direct.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you have two major projects currently. One is a co-production, Moscow, US, China, and this one you just...
This will be a Chinese-US co-production, and then I have working with another producing team and our director, US director for action comedy. And that's probably, you know, 3 of the projects of the whole slate I'm working right now. We're now in development stage, in different very development stage, a slate of about 7-8 movies right now. Yeah.
In your opinion, what are the major differences between US and Chinese production processes?
Production processes you talk about? Wow. I think Hollywood filmmaking process are very mature. It's industrialized from development stage all the way to final delivery. Even just, you know, screenwriting software to make budget, scheduling, you know, all that. And post-production process are very systematic. Compared to China right now, although Chinese film industry has a long history, it's almost parallel with Hollywood. We have more than 100 years history of making movies as well. You know, early film studios in Shanghai, all that stuff. However, in terms of a processing of it, we have a lot of room to develop in China, to learn, to make it more pragmatic, more controlled environment. Right now, I think you cannot call it industrialized yet. The whole pipeline is not totally set up. Every procedure as controlled, monitored as how we make a movie here. It gives us a lot of flexibility to make a movie in China, but also it had so much more unpredictability in there. You don't know what piece is gonna fall because you are not running it as exact what you expected. So it's a lot of room to develop, to learn, to excel in China right now.
How do you feel about the future of the entertainment industry in both China and Hollywood?
I hope there are a lot more exchange, collaboration from both ends in all aspects of filmmaking, whether from content creation stage of development to physical production to, in the end, how to market a movie, how to sell the film. There's a lot of room for people from both ends to work together, to inject different energy into filmmaking process. But I think the challenging part, which is also great, is that, and which is also most exciting, it's always starting, you know, very, very early stage, which is some foundation to set up a film can be successful, is what story do you want to tell? Content creation, managing intellectual property. You know, this is a cornerstone for anything to build upon. And I think it's very challenging too, because we talk about human mind.
Sure.
We have different cultural references. We have different social aspects. You know, what issues really important in the market in China right now for a teenager there versus here, it could be different. So it is challenging to make a film somehow can reach both end of audience, but creative matters also is such subjective matters, right? Even you just make a movie here for the audience here, there's always struggles, always give and take, and find a way you can maneuver through. Hopefully this is gonna work.
Sure.
But I see the future is bright because, Chinese film market has blooming so fast and so strong in the last few years. And the total box office revenue this year, I think, will be equal or surpass the North American box office here. We're adding about 30 screens every single day, building new theaters, adding more screens in China. I think right now the number of screens are equal as how many in the US.
Wow.
And some movies not doing so well here, the big, budget film, and doing very well in China. Yeah. So that market is definitely so important right now. This is something we all pay a lot of attention right now from Hollywood. And the same thing for Chinese filmmakers over there. They wanted to also outreach to international market. And in fact, there's so much investment also from Chinese companies and put investment financing utility here in big studios or mini major studios or individual projects. So this exchange, the communication, the collaboration are going on right now. It's just we always need to find the balance from the content creation to physical production to, small aspect to overall big spectrum. So it's a lot of room to learn from each other, to find the best from each side, and hopefully we can make movies can leave us, put us in a way we know it has a strong message, can have a certain strong resonance in our life day to day, to tell a story people remember, leave something with you in your heart. And that's, I think, for all filmmakers, no matter where you are, China, India, US, Australia, this is all what we strive for.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lianne, for your reply and your vision.
Thank you.
Looking forward to our next meeting here at the Millennium Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Thank you for watching Hollywood Meets China. I am Romy. See you next time.